You're watching HCAM's public channel, where you can keep up with the latest events happening in Hingham and our surrounding communities. For more community-related programming, tune in to HCAM's educational channel on Comcast 22, Verizon Fios 29, and Government channel on Comcast 9 and Verizon Fios 30.
Good evening. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy and very hot schedules to be here. Today was a doozy, geez. My name is Michelle LeBreton. I'm co-chair of the Hingham Residents Against the Compressor Station, which we affectionately call, HCAR, I can't even talk right now, sorry. Also known as HRAC. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen, Town Hall, and HCAM for their help tonight, setting up all of our AV needs. My fellow co-chairs, Jennifer Mathian, Brittany Gamble, and Don Murray, and I would like to thank Senator O'Connor, Representative Murphy, and Representative Machino, and Weymouth Councilor Becky Howe for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here. Thank you, everybody, for your support. Everyone you see on stage tonight, along with a dedicated team of Hingham residents and many others, strongly believe the proposed compressor station plan for North Weymouth is unprecedented, unjust, and unnecessary. The impact to Weymouth, Hingham, and the entire South Shore, frankly, should grab your attention. When I first heard about this project, I was skeptical. To be honest, I thought everyone had to be exaggerating. After just a few days of research, it was clear they were not. At this time, I would like to introduce Senator Patrick O'Connor. Senator O'Connor has been fighting against this project with all of his might. We're lucky to have him on our side. Senator?
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for all you. Thank you for all of you for coming out here this evening as well. I would like to also thank my colleagues in government, Representative Machino, who is here with us today, who's been fighting this project alongside us. Representative Murphy, who I know is on his way here, who's coming from Boston, he'll be here soon. Alice Arena from Frax, who have been fighting this over in North Weymouth and the Fort Worth Basin for so long. Thank you, Alice. And to the Hingham Residents Against the Compressor Station, Jen, Michelle, everybody that's been so great and energized over the past year now. It's been excellent to really get everyone together. I'll give some brief remarks, and then I'll pass it over to District 1 Councilor Becky Howe, who really brought this to all of our attention back when, about 2.5 years ago, roughly, when we were on the City Council and discussing this specific issue. And at that point in time, it was just sort of a bad idea, and then since then it's become even worse and even more frightening as the more research is being done and the more you dig into the real details of the filings from Spectra Energy, now Enbridge Energy up in Canada, as far as what they want to do, where they want to do it specifically, and the impact that this could have, not just of the worst case scenarios with a malfunction to the compressor station facility, but also the untold risk. What's going into our atmosphere, what's going into our air that we breathe in, that our children are running around playing in, what specific impacts are to that. So what we have developed is a fact-based PowerPoint presentation that we'll be presenting this evening, and essentially all of these factual pieces of information are not hard to find because they come exactly from the proponents' paperwork that they're filing with the federal government, with the state government. So we just want to put a shining light on exactly what this is specifically, why we think it's a bad location for this specific compressor station, and why we think that this is something that's going to have negative effects for years and years to come if we don't all continue to rally together to fight this with all of our might. And we'll talk about some of the fronts in which we're currently attacking this and some of the things that we're doing over in Weymouth, here in Hingham, throughout the South Shore and in the state, in order to make sure that this doesn't happen, and that we put as much stoppages in place as we possibly can to continue to delay the project, which we already have. If we hadn't gotten involved, residents hadn't gotten involved, the town of Weymouth hadn't gotten involved, this compressor station would be under construction. But because of the delays that we have put in place, we're here today, we're able to talk about it with all of you, and to hopefully continue to gain momentum in our fight against this compressor station. So thank you very much for being here. We can't wait for the presentation, and I'm going to pass it over to Councilor Becky Howe, who has been on the forefront of this issue and a complete leader on this issue for the town of Weymouth and the entire South Shore. So without further ado, North Weymouth Councilor Becky Hawk.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Rep. Mosquino, for being here. And again, thank you to Alice Arena. You know, as a town councilor, we're expected to know everything about our city or our town, and a lot of this stuff is a lot over our heads. And Alice Arena really reached out to me right in the beginning and said, can I grab a coffee with you and talk about this proposal? I think it was about a month after we first heard it. And if it wasn't for her to really say, you need to look into this, you need to be concerned, I might have just said, oh, it's just one more thing in the Florida River, not a big deal. We're used to a lot of stuff down there. So I really appreciate the community feedback. Residents, you do matter in town government when you speak up. Your local representatives are listening to you. We have been at this for over 2.5 years now, and I know we're just here in Hingham now, and I thank you so much for inviting me over here. We really need this new engagement from Hingham. We're so exhausted in Weymouth, to be honest. 2.5 years is a long time to battle. We still have a fight in us, but we really appreciate your new support, your new engagement, your new energy. It's so much appreciated, and we just thank you for coming out here tonight. I think any questions you have tonight will be addressed in the PowerPoint. So I think maybe without further ado, we should start the PowerPoint, and then feel free to ask any questions throughout it, or if you want to hold off till after, or even grab us afterwards. We're happy to talk to you, okay?
Thanks, Becky. So if you haven't had it, there's a printout version of the PowerPoint that is up in the back, and Daria and Greg from my office can give you one if you haven't received one. But to just start the Can everyone see the PowerPoint? So we'll be going over around 7 specific items in this. First will be, what is a compressor station? Secondly, it will be what's wrong with the proposed location of the North Weymouth compressor station. 3 is how have we gotten to this point. 4 is what the permitting process specifically is. 5 is how we can overrule the deciding federal agencies. 6 is what legislative action can be taken. And 7, what local action is taken right now. Would it be possible to put the backlight on?
Mary, can you try and find it? Thank you very much.
Is that good enough? So a compressor station. A compressor station is a facility that helps the transportation process of natural gas from one location to another. This is something that needs to be installed along all of our natural gas pipelines every 40 to 100 miles. Essentially, this process cleans the gas that's being flowed through the pipelines in order for a continuous, smooth flow of this natural gas. The proposed location in North Weymouth is part of Spectra Energy, which recently sold to Enbridge, which is a Canadian company. Spectra Energy's Atlantic Bridge project to bring fracked natural gas through New England and into Canada. Now, these statistics are based off of the environmental assessment in which it identified approximately 60%?
70%.
Approximately 70% of the energy related to this compressor station will be going to Canada. The remaining will be going to a mixture of Connecticut and Massachusetts, and Maine, but they're able to combine the Connecticut and Massachusetts numbers, and so we don't really know the full amount of actual gas that Massachusetts will be receiving due to this proposed compressor station. The proposed site is directly adjacent to the Fall River Bridge, which is currently under construction, due to open in October with a grand opening sometime next year. This is the largest public works project the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has paid for since the Big Dig. And this compressor station, which is going to be next to other highly industrial pieces of commercial property, is going to be directly adjacent to this new over $300 million bridge. The peninsula is already surrounded by a gas-fired power plant, a sewage treatment facility, and a glycerin factory. Next, you can see exactly the heavy industrial that's currently occupied at the Fall River Basin, specifically the treatment facility, the transfer station with a proposed project's going to be compressor station, the Calpine power plant. As you can see, the Fall River Basin, which in my opinion is the gateway to the South Shore, has already been completely littered with industrial projects that for too long have been having a negative consequence on the ability for economic development in that area, as well as on the health of the area, and we'll get into some of that later. The existing compressor stations in the United States of America are usually built in rural locations away from densely populated residential centers, usually on 50-plus acres of land to ensure safety during normal operations and in case of emergency situation. These generate a significant amount of noise. FERC requires that the noise level can be no greater than 55 decibels at the closest noise-sensitive area. Noise-sensitive areas include occupied residences, places of worship, and other locations such as schools, parks, playgrounds, and other recreational facilities. These natural gas compressor stations are powered by combustion engines, which vents exhaust emissions into the atmosphere. And again, according to an environmental assessment from the proponents, there's at least 10 carcinogenic, cancer-causing chemicals that are emitted.
Sure. So it should be noted that the Weymouth site is only 4 acres. Some of the documents you may have read show 12 acres. However, a lot of that acreage is current access roads, underwater land, and land that just cannot be developed. So really the site is 4 acres, and it's surrounded by no open space like existing compressor stations are. There has been no comprehensive study of the air quality in the Fall River Basin, and that hasn't been mandated by the state. If you look through all of the documents they have produced, they take the chemicals and the current readings from different air monitors from Mass DEP in places such as Plymouth, Mattapan, Blue Hills, Roxbury. There's nothing actually monitoring the chemicals that are in the Fall River Basin. In fact, they actually scatter where they take the chemical calculations from, because if they picked any one of those, whether it be Plymouth or Blue Hills or Roxbury, they would have gone over at least one of them. And so that's how they get away with it, is they take the data from random Mass DEP monitors. We are also this would be the most densely populated area a compressor station has ever been sited in the United States of America. Within a half mile, there's about 930 landowners. I know we put homes on the PowerPoint, but it's actually landowners. I just want to make one point about this is, if you actually go to this site and look across the bay, you'll see a big apartment complex in Quincy that has about 200 units. There's 200 people living in those units, but there is one landowner. So in that one instance, that's one in that 930, not 200. So the data is extremely skewed because of federal regulations, they only have to notify landowners and not homeowners or occupants or renters. Within 1 mile, there are 3,100 children that live or go to school within that 1 mile radius. Again, if you take the data from existing compressor stations on the Algonquin lines, such as Oxford, Connecticut, Chatham, Connecticut, Burrville, this is extremely higher than any of them. Most of them have maybe about 200 children living within 1 mile of their compressor station. And we expanded it further in Weymouth. We went 3 miles because we know that the pollution does carry due to the winds in the Fall River. Over 13,000 children attend school within the proposed location, and that does not include daycare centers. If you include the daycare centers, that number multiplies greatly. And with the timeline, I personally met with a Spectre representative about the last week of December in 2014, and they told us about the proposed location in Weymouth. They pretty much sold us as, don't worry, we're going to build a garage on this empty parcel, you won't even notice it's there, blah, blah, blah. We went home, we got ready for Christmas, and they said we'd have these open houses. And that's pretty much when Spectre pre-filed with FERC, and when they had open houses in Weymouth. Since then, we did a lot of research in Weymouth. We brought on board people in Quincy. FRAX was formed. And in that time, by our first open scoping meeting that FERC had, the entire Weymouth Town Council, which is 11 people who represent the town of Weymouth, spoke out against the compressor stations of FERC. Additionally, in June of 2015, we again sent a a formal resolution against the compressor station. That didn't stop them though. They said, however, we're going to keep moving forward, and in October they filed their official application. After October, Mayor Hedlund was sworn in as our new mayor, and he was proposed with a $47 million pretty much mitigation deal, saying drop all your fights, we'll give you $47 million, which was a compromise of changing state law to be taxed more on compressor stations and mitigation payments, and he refused that. Then we pretty much fast forward to where we are this year. FERC issued the conditional certificate to build the compressor station. And I really want to emphasize the word conditional, because that's conditioned on 4 state permits that are still needed. We do not have any of them. It's the wetlands permit, the waterways permit, and CZM, along with air quality permit. And I think many of you have commented on those in the past few weeks, and we really appreciate that. And we still, although the federal government said yes, you can build this, it's conditioned on those 4 state permits to say yes. And that pretty much led me into the March and May, and we're still fighting. We do not have any of those 4 state permits. The first one was denied last May. That was our Weymouth Conservation Commission denied the wetlands permit, and it's been stuck in an appeal ever since.
So as Becky had just said, the state permitting process, right now, there's an air quality permit that so many of you wrote in. We had over 1,200 comments. Not a single comment was in favor of the compressor station that wasn't written by the proponent themselves. And they're reviewing currently a lot of the comments that were made. This is a permit that requires state approval. It's currently pending a final approval that was recently issued by Mass DEP. Again, it says over 1,100 comments. It was over 1,200 comments the last time that we spoke. And these air quality permits are incredibly important, in my opinion, because these compressor stations are known to emit PM 2.5 gases, which, according to multiple reports that you can look up online, and we actually have some of the data for specifically, University of Southeastern Pennsylvania did a study on this, that these compressor stations emit PM 2.5 gases, which include ethylbenzene, butane, and hexane, which are known contributors to childhood autism. The air depression modeling cannot be accurately acquired for the forward basin, again, because there's no monitoring stations in the nearby region. This is something that I learned about during this process that I found was one of the most outrageous things, was the fact that we're agreeing to permits and allowing this to go through when specific monitoring devices for the air in which we breathe aren't located within 10, 15 miles of these specific areas. So I can't understand how you can get an accurate reading without actually putting an air monitoring station somewhere nearby. And luckily enough, FRAX was able to raise some money recently, we'll get into that in a little bit, to actually test this air. Test the air in the direct area, in the surrounding area, rather than relying on something that's 10 miles away or 11 miles away. And the same goes for a lot of other highly environmentally concerning areas, as far as there's no air monitoring stations nearby, including the Pilgrim Power Plant, which I believe Brockton is the area in which they monitor the air quality for Plymouth, which makes absolutely no sense to me. This is an air monitoring station. As we talked about, this is one of the things that we would hope, and I have written a bill to make sure that an air monitoring station is within 1 mile of any of these compressor stations that are to be built or are currently built in Massachusetts. This is something that is a very cost-effective and efficient way to measure exactly what we're breathing. The second is the wetlands permit. And this requires local approval, but is now in the hands of the state. The Weymouth Conservation Commission, as a delay tactic, denied the permit in May of 2016. Spectra appealed the denial, and the appeal is currently under consideration by DEP. And this is essentially another one of the incredibly important things that we have going for us. And this is something as well where if the state overturns it, then the local municipality has some litigation that they could potentially file on behalf of the community to continue and further say that this is something that they disagree with the state's ruling on.
Yes, so the next permit, the second one, which should come after wetlands, which again still hasn't been settled yet, is waterways. This is a state approval. We did have an open comment period last May, and we did actually just get pretty much a draft approval from them recently. I think many of you saw that they put out the draft approval for this waterways license, and we had 21 days to appeal. However, the only way to appeal was if you made a comment at last year's public hearing. I do want to say, though, the town of Weymouth, who did make comments, did appeal, and there was also a group of 23 citizens who formed a 10-citizen appeal group. Pretty much if you go through the regs of Mass DEP, any group of 10 or more citizens who commented can lobby together and appeal to the state, which with the helps of FRAX and them, they were able to do that. So we have 2 known appeals that have moved forward to appeal the state permitting process. And again, this will be an ongoing procedure, just like wetlands. That was originally denied last May, and that's still held up, and it probably will not even be considered until this fall at the very earliest. So we now have to wait through the waterways license for this. And lastly is coastal zone management. And this is actually a federal approval, but it's delegated to the state hands. The CZA Act gives states the authority to review federal projects to ensure that they meet state standards articulated in CZM policies. These reviews are required for projects that are in or can reasonably be expected to affect a use or resource of the Massachusetts coastal zone and require federal licenses or permits and receive certain federal funds or a different action of a federal agency. It's important to note with CZM, this is one of only 3 acts that can actually trump FERC. It's Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and CZM are the only 3 agencies in the country that can overrule a FERC decision. So even though FERC said, yes, you can build this as long as you get these permits, if coastal zone management says no, which has been delegated to the state, then the FERC certificate goes away. And again, normally coastal zone management will not even take this up until wetlands and waterways is ruled. So we're not sure exactly when CZM will make a statement or make any sort of decision, but it should be after wetlands and waterways is finalized completely, after all the appeals that we go through.
And the reason why CZM has to weigh in specifically is because of the location of the compressor station on the Fall River Basin on a waterway, which also in some of the research that the mayor's office has been able to do, and FRAX and Councilor Haw, this is the only compressor station that is to be built on a waterway. So again, when you're trying to determine the need for this, it's on a 4-acre parcel of land, which makes it the most dense. There's all these people living around there, which makes it the most highly populated. And then on top of that, you have to have CZM weigh in because it's the only compressor station that's to be built on a waterway. On the next slide, it shows you specifically the agency of authority for each one of these specific things we talked about. When you talk about air emissions, it's regulated by the Clean Water Act, as Becky just talked about, and it's enforced by the EPA. When you look at noise emissions, as we talked about before, the 55 decibel point, that's monitored by the EPA. When you look at erosion and sediment, FERC works in coordination with conservation districts such as the Conservation Commission in Weymouth in order to determine that. The siting of the area. And when this was being proposed to us, they proposed the current location, and they also proposed 3 alternative locations. One was in Franklin, the other 2 were in Weymouth, and they presented to us a sort of a group of specialists that they had to go out, whether it be on Homeland Security or environment, paid consultants that Spectra Energy and now Enbridge had put before us as a council in Weymouth. And they were talking about how there wasn't going to be a Homeland Security threat to the Fall River location, that there wasn't going to be an environmental threat, there wasn't going to be a potential for break-ins, or how strong the pipes are, all of these things. And we asked a simple question where it was, did they look at any of the other locations, the alternative locations? They said no. And this is after they'd already offered $47 million. I mean, this is one of those things that there's a tremendous benefit to this location, whether it be hydraulics, whether it be future plans, whatever it may be, that's worth enough to them that they wouldn't even consider alternative locations to this proposal. And on top of that, they're willing to offer $47 million to a community that they know has, some difficulties in budgeting with a lack of commercial base and trying to buy their way in. I was very proud that Weymouth stood up. We said no. We continue this fight because of how uniquely wrong this specific location is for the compressor station. And as you continue going down, so FERC has control over siting. FERC has control over the vibration requirements. The U.S. Department of Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration has the oversight of the operation, maintenance, and safety. And then public input when it comes to exactly the importance of when you reach out to your government to tell them that you're opposed to this or that you have concerns about this, that is also monitored by FERC. And that's one of the things that's been most disheartening about this. It's been great to see how many people have worked together to get letters out, to make sure that our voices are being heard at a state and federal level. My main concern is that we have this process where we have 1,100 comments, or we have 1,200 comments, and the FERC input was massive as well. I want to make sure that that public input is being heard and being respected, because right now, when the process continues to go as it does usually and typically, when you have an atypical project like what's being proposed right here, I think that public input to all these projects should matter, but especially when you're getting this much of an outrage, that we should get something back from our state and federal regulators. But again, so that's when you look at who oversees this. It's basically the EPA and FERC has a large amount of responsibility here, specifically for the siting. And FERC has issued the conditional approval on this location.
Sure. I did sort of touch on this earlier, but again, I just want to stress how just because FERC said yes, as long as you get these 4 permits, these are the 3 acts that can trump FERC. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, Coastal Zone Management, and the only one that applies to us is Coastal Zone Management. Like Senator O'Connor said, the only reason we're up against this wetlands permit, the waterways permit, coastal zone, is because it's on the 4-river basin. Had this compressor station have been proposed for, say, South Weymouth, Hingham, Holbrook, anywhere else not on the coast, they would not have to have gone through these procedures, and when FERC issued their permit, it would have been built, because we have all of these acts that protect our coastline. So we're really trying to keep fighting and push it so we can still succeed in fighting the compressor station.
And then when you look at the importance of some of the state regulation that's going on right now, and I'd like to recognize Representative Murphy, who's here and who's been a champion and a fighter of this project since the very beginning with us. So everybody, Representative James Murphy. I serve on the Senate Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change, and the biggest thing that we talk about, and we actually have a tour going on where we're in Weymouth recently, was the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008. And this is a law that requires DEP to set strict greenhouse gas emission limits to have the state meet a goal of reducing our greenhouse gas 25% by 2020. And we are extremely close to meeting this. The last reports we have, it's about 2 years behind. We're at about 18 to 19% of this threshold. Sometimes, in some reports more, in some reports less. But there's still more work to be done, but we feel confident we can meet this. We also had an executive order where I stood behind Governor Baker and he signed a recommitment to the Global Warming Solutions Act. This has been something that has been litigated, and the Supreme Court of Massachusetts has ruled that the Commonwealth needs to abide by these standards that were set. The North Weymouth Compressor Station goes completely opposite to the progress we have made and also the commitment we have made to meeting this goal, because it would add an estimated 41,700 tons of emitted greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and this would make it extremely difficult to meet these standards. There would have to be offsets throughout the entire state of 41,000 plus tons of greenhouse gas that is going to be emitted.
And just to piggyback off that, that's 41,000 tons per year, and that's also only in the Atlantic Bridge project. For those who don't know, We're facing two projects. Atlantic Bridge builds the compressor station, and then Access Northeast will more than double the size of the compressor station. So again, that 41,000 tons of greenhouse gases is only in the first stage of building this compressor station, and then it would actually increase probably more than double that if they expand it in Access Northeast.
Which is probably another reason why this location was specifically this financially important to them. And the pipes that are going through the Atlantic Bridge compressor station, proposed compressor station, are pipes that are in Braintree and Quincy, and Access Northeast would actually bring new pipeline right through Weymouth in order to go to this compressor station. Legislative action, when I first got elected and got sworn in, we were able to put an amendment on the banning of frack gas. The Massachusetts State Senate has banned the fracking of gas in Massachusetts. It didn't pass through the House of Representatives, but when we did that, we tied on an amendment to restrict compressor stations from being built. At that point in time, after negotiation with the leaders on Beacon Hill, I was able to get 3/10 of a mile of a residential, of a residence, of a church, of a playground, of a park, of a daycare facility, and we were able to get that passed. And I was very proud of that because the Massachusetts State Senate at that point in time took a stance saying, we oppose this compressor station, and we're willing to put something on the books in Massachusetts general laws in opposition to this. Flash forward, that, again, as I said, the entire bill of banning frack gas, all the other good environmental initiatives, it ended up making its way to the House of Representatives. Very late in the session, there was a host of bills that the Senate was able to kick over to the House of Representatives, and there's always a back and forth as far as what bills are able to get passed, what bills aren't able to get passed. This one, coming out of the Senate, seemed that it was going to be extremely difficult to get passed through the House of Representatives. Nothing against the House of Representatives, as we have a great member here who tried and advocated for that. There's just different leadership philosophies that are over there, and there's some horse trading going on as far as trying to get specific bills passed and tight deadlines to be met at the end of legislative session. But I was proud to be joined by my colleague, Representative Murphy, on filing a whole host of bills that he and I decided to write, and the first one was the positioning of a compressor station. And essentially what we said was, no compressor station should be built within a half mile of where anyone lives, just period. We don't know the environmental effects of this. The little that we do know, the factual information that we do know is not good as far as the negative impacts that this is having on people's health. We do not believe that these should be in areas in which they could potentially malfunction and put a major detriment into a specific area. So this bill would essentially do that. We just had a hearing on this. We were overwhelmed by the response that we got. Everyone joined together in saying this is something that we need on the books. And this is a tool that we can use. As we continue this fight against this compressor station, this is a tool that if we can get this past the legislature, we can go in litigation and say Massachusetts has already had something on the books. The state Senate already passed something saying we don't want anything located within X amount of distance. It might be half a mile, it might be 3/10 of a mile. Who knows by the time that this is that this goes through the legislative process where it ends up. But we want to make sure something's on the books in the Massachusetts general laws so that Massachusetts has taken a stand saying this is an inappropriate location for this compressor station. The second, as we touched on earlier, is an air monitoring station. In talking with Representative Murphy and myself, we figured if you're going to put something of this environmentally sensitive of a concern, make sure you monitor it. Make sure we know exactly what's being emitted in the atmosphere. Make sure we know exactly what the cancer-causing chemicals are, what the half-life are of these specific chemicals. Make sure we know what we're breathing. The third is, so when Spectra Energy offered the $47 million, I was in the room with Mayor Headland, and when we were discussing the specifics of their proposal, they had showed their hand. They offered they offered $21 million over 3 years in mitigation, straight up cash payments to the community. They then exposed a tax loophole that currently exists in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, another thing that Big Energy was able to get through at some point in time, that the taxation structure for the compressor station is that they are taxed just as an underground pipeline is taxed. So currently, if this compressor station were to be built, all of the heavy machinery, everything that is involved with that station would be taxed as an underground utility, which is taxed at an extremely low rate. Spectra Energy said that they would hire lobbyists to work on Weymouth's behalf in order to change this law. Well, when we denied that, the first thing that I wanted to do, in working with Becky specifically and Representative Murphy, was to figure out how we change that law. So we have put together legislation that would essentially tax these gas compressor stations as they should be taxed, just as any other heavy industrial company would be taxed. And that change would be $47,000, would be currently under the structure of what the town of Weymouth would receive in property taxes should this be built. It would be $1.4 million if we changed this annually. And the depreciation component that goes along with that $47,000 brings it down to almost nothing, next to nothing over 20 years. So this is, again, a loophole that Big Energy has been able to somehow get into our government, and it's something we should be taking away because there is no reason that they shouldn't be paying their fair share of taxes for putting this property in North Weymouth. The last one would task the University of Massachusetts to conduct a comprehensive health impact assessment to examine potential public health impacts directly related to natural gas compressor stations. This is something that I think that should be done no matter what. I think that in any sort of environmental concern that individuals have where proponents of the project are admitting that they're omitting 10 cancer-causing chemicals, I think that we should have one of our envy of the world universities be looking into exactly the public health components that go along with it. This just goes to show Senate Bill 469, which myself, Councilor Ha, Representative Moschino, Representative Murphy testified on. Senate Bill 1603, we're currently before the Joint Committee on Environmental, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, as well as the Joint Committee on Revenue with the tax bill specifically. And the amount of support has been outstanding. We have Republicans and Democrats hand in hand saying we should tax a company more, which Jay Kaufman, the chair of Revenue, said it was the first time that he's ever seen that. And when we had the hearing on 469, the room was packed, and they were packed for this bill specifically. And I can't thank you all enough for the advocacy and support, shown in that specifically. They haven't been released from committee yet, but I feel very confident that we're going to get something done, that we're going to get results from this. There's just too much pressure and advocacy on a local level. There's too much pressure and advocacy on a state level. We need to make sure that the federal and state regulators that are responsible for this continue to hear from us. Don't get discouraged by the 1,200 comments and then a draft approval comes after that. Don't get discouraged by how uniquely disappointing it is that we have this going on in our backyard. Let's just continue to fight. It's been something that we have been able to do successfully for a period of time now that, as I said before, without it, this compressor station would have been built already. We've already denied wetlands permits at a local level. We've already stalled them. It's costing them a lot of money in these stalls. We have to continue to do it. And I'm going to hand it over to Councilor Ha, and we'll wrap up. We'll bring up Representative Murphy, and we'll take questions or comments. But specifically, one of the most important things was the meeting of FRACS about 2 weeks ago now, when Boston pediatrician Kurt Nergrad, I hope I'm saying his name right, discussed the independent analysis that was done in the air monitoring stations that were purchased by FRACS. It shouldn't take the work of everyday human beings and taxpayers to pay for these specific materials and go out there and conduct these tests. It should be what the government is doing on our behalf, and something that we are trying to do with the legislation that we've proposed and the advocacy that we've had. But some of these results are pretty staggering on what exists as is right now. And I'd like to turn it over to Councilor Ha to finish this one part out.
Sure. Just as far as local action, obviously this is going to be cited in North Weymouth. The Weymouth Town Council's really, they've done everything in their power as a body to comment, question every step of the process for the past 2.5 years. The city of Quincy has done very similar. And again, we're so grateful to be here tonight in Hingham for anything you can provide. And again, to highlight what Dr. Kurt Nergrad did with FRACS, we knew the air permit was going to be coming up, and I believe it was over a year ago we started fundraising. We bought air monitors, and They have been studying the air in the Quincy and North Weymouth region for over a year now and collecting data samples, and that's what he presented last year. And if it wasn't for his knowledge and FRAC's for having the determination to go out fundraise and their time and energy to place all these air monitors all over to collect the data, they wouldn't have had what they had. And some of the results were really shocking. In fact, currently with no compressor station, a lot of the chemicals were actually already over the limit based on the data that he collected. Benzene was 4.5 times over the Mass DE limit in some locations. Methylene chloride, 28.5 times percent over the Mass DEP limit, and hexane again was over. And again, these are all chemicals that are known to, cause cancer, cause autism, cause COPD, tons of stuff. And I live in North Weymouth. I see it every day. Every other neighbor has either cancer or their family has cancer, and it's shocking. And unfortunately, these chemicals don't know town limits. And to think, like right now, we're less than 3 miles away from the proposed compressor station with a bird's eye view. So it is going to affect Hingham. And I think about all the times in the past 2.5 years as I'm looking at Alice, the weekends we spent leafleting, trying to get people out there to go to these public hearings. There's so much local action has been taken in the past 2.5 years, but we just have to keep up the momentum. It's a lot to ask for working families. And I just thank everyone here who has done anything, whether it's been an hour or 100 hours or 1,000 hours. Just thank you so much. And no, I serve on the Weymouth Town Council. We're going to keep going every single step of the way. We're going to do something and keep continuing to fight it. And I really appreciate Representative Murphy, Moschino, who had to leave, and Senator O'Connor for all the time they've done on the state level to really help enforce our efforts on the local level to prevent this from happening in the Fall River Basin.
We'll open it up to questions, but first I'd like to bring up Representative Murphy.
First of all, let's give Senator O'Connor and Representative Becky Haas such a round of applause for all of everything you have done for us. For those that don't know me, I'm Jennifer Mathian, one of the co-founders of the Hingham Residents Against the Compressor Station, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I know that was a lot of information, especially if this is new to you. I would also like to give a big round of applause to all of the people in this room, but all of the people out of this room who have been advocating for our community for over 2 years. Thank you. A few takeaways, if you take anything away from this presentation. Spectra Enbridge is planning on putting a massive natural gas compressor station less than 2 miles from Hingham's borders. Compressor stations are historically known for their health, public safety, environmental, and economic impacts. There is so much data. Why I'm here is because of the health. The health hazards alone around existing compressor stations are horrendously scary. Things like nosebleeds, headaches, asthma, COPD, neurologic issues, seizures, cancers, you name it. The fact of the matter is, if we have a choice on erring on the side of caution or on the side of danger, I know for sure which side I am leaning towards. We as a group of, as a community, HRAC, are growing by the day, but we are accepting new members because the staggering fact is there are over 20,000 members of the Hingham community, and many of them don't know about this risk yet. So that's where we really, really do need your help. We need you to read and become educated about it and then share the information. And with that, let's pass it over to Representative Murphy, and then I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to be here. I represent the town of Weymouth and part of the town of Hingham in the legislature. I represent Precinct 2. I've had the honor of serving for the past 17 years in the legislature. Seen a lot of things, a lot of issues happen over the years, but this is one of the scariest issues that I've seen. And what we talked about a little while ago, it's amazing how many people still don't know about it. It's been going on for a while now, for a couple of years anyway. And with all of the media that's out there and Facebook and everything else, I'm still surprised that so many people don't know about what's going on with this compressor station issue. I think it first started out as a local issue in Weymouth, and I think now it has grown beyond the borders. You know, the towns of Braintree, City of Quincy, and now you all are all on board and interested in this issue. And thank you for the work of Alice Arena and her group for doing Alice, why don't you stand up? I don't know if you've been recognized or not, but Alice Arena. Just to stay on top of the issue and understand just the facts and the circumstances and the details, it's amazing. It makes us have to be scientists. Like Patrick and Becky talked about earlier, you look at everything on the screen here in regards to the PowerPoint, we don't have that background in any of this. We're not scientists, but the federal government puts it on us to make the argument that this station shouldn't be allowed in Weymouth, when it's the federal government that should be aware of these things, and they should be making the argument for us. But we're forced to learn exactly about what a compressor station is. We're forced to learn about what it emits in the air. We're forced to learn how dangerous it is. Then we're forced to present that argument to the federal government to say, hey, this is not a good idea. As Patrick and Becky mentioned, it's amazing to me that the onus is on us to tell our government that this is a bad idea. The town of Weymouth turned down a lot of money that the town needs. But, you know, I was born and raised in the town. I've lived in the South Shore my whole life. And Patrick and Becky will tell you that as a neighborhood, as a community, we didn't care if we were offered $1 billion. We would have said no to this power plant, to this compressor station issue. I have had a few meetings in the State House over the years that have really angered me. The meeting that I had with the power plant company when they came in to talk to me really angered me from the beginning, to the point where I asked them to leave my office. I realized that when they came in to talk about things, they weren't interested in talking about anything. They were interested in talking at me. And I took it as an insult. The dialogue seemed to come one way, and I think that in their mind, they thought that the federal government was on their side, the laws were on their side, the community wouldn't last in opposition. But you can see here we are, years later, with people getting up every day like Alice and just holding signs at the Fort River Bridge, towns turning down $40 million, the town of Hingham coming out to support our cause. The power plant companies do not want that. This process is a difficult process, one, to understand. If you're doing it full time, it's hard to understand. Two, it's long, and it's made to tire you out. It's made so that the communities will either get confused about the process, get tired about the process, or be paid off to the point where you take the money, you go away, and the power plant's built. This isn't about us. This isn't about Hingham today, or Weymouth today, or Braintree or Quincy today. This is about our grandkids. When you look at the stuff that those power plants, those pumping stations emit into the air, it's disgusting. You look at the numbers over there now, and they'll say everything's fine over there, the numbers are okay. And that's even, as Becky said, previous to the power plants, compressor station even being built. My parents are over in North Weymouth. My family's in North Weymouth. My family's in Hingham. My family's here forever. I'd get a kick out of going to these meetings early on, and they were at the Abigail Adams School. And so we'd go down there, myself, Becky, and Pat would go down to these meetings. And out in front of the school, there'd be a fleet of like black vans. The people that would fly in for the meeting, the neighborhood meetings, you know, the executives for the power plant company, they were flying in, they'd go into the meeting, tell you what you want to hear, they get back into their fleet of vans, go back to the airport, and they're gone. I've been in this area for 47 years, my entire life. I'm not going anywhere. And when the station is to be built, or is to be built, to say it is built, they're going to be gone. These executives are gone, but we're here to live with the stuff that's in the air. And I refuse to accept the fact that the federal government won't say no to this pumping station. We're lucky, as they mentioned earlier, as Patrick and Becky mentioned earlier, there are some coastal permits that they're forced to get. we've been on board opposing the compressor station at every step of the way, from the council level to the Senate level to the representatives level to the U.S. Congress. Stephen Lynch has been great. Mayor Headland, Mayor Sullivan, Mayor Koch, we're all on the same page. Every step of the way we've opposed this pumping station. And the compressor station companies, the energy companies, they don't like it. They don't like to be delayed because delays cost them money. And we continue to fight it. There's lawsuits filed, which is all, I'm an attorney. I know how lawsuits can slow down a process. I know that the Spectra Energy doesn't want to drag this out, but we're gonna drag it out. We're gonna fight and kick and scream every step of the way. And I can tell you that it's an honor to serve in government. It's an honor to serve with Patrick and Becky and the mayors of our community and the senators and the congressmen in our community. It's government at its best. If you ever think that government doesn't work for you, just look at this one issue. And I only say that because it's really great and heartening for me after being in politics for so long to see government working so well. And I've seen it happen in so many cases. When I first started in politics, before I started in politics, there was an issue in the town of Weymouth, and it's an unrelated issue. But back in the 90s, they wanted to be the Foxy Lady Strip Club. You know what that is? Some of you might know. They wanted to open up a spot in Weymouth, right? Across from BJ's Wholesale Club, the Chinese food restaurant. I was in my first year of law school. All the attorneys would say that strip clubs are protected by the First Amendment. You can't stop them. Well, we did. And we did it with community effort. I was 5 years away from ever running for office, but we picketed the location for 6 months, along with my colleagues here. We picketed, put the community pressure on, enough that the Fox lady decided to go somewhere else. So that's how we entered politics, being told that a fight you can't win that fight. And we won that fight. This is much more dangerous than that issue. And I'm here today in support of all of you, in support of my colleagues Patrick and Becky. I'm in support of all of you who want to get active and motivated. Spread the word. It's amazing, you know, the town of Weymouth has 58,000 people, 56,000 people. The town of Hingham has 20,000 people. And I find that talking to my neighbors, a lot of them don't know about it. And the ones that do but think other people work on their behalf, we get it. We know people are busy. People are inundated with information and news stories and Facebook and everything else. We know people are busy. But this is a fight that's going to affect our generations, our family's generations, for many years to come. And that's why I'm here in support of all of you, in support of my kids, in support of my wife and my family who plans on being here for a long time. And I refuse to give in to the fact that the cards are stacked against us. I know that if we all stick together and the community opposition grows and the governor's office hears loud and clear that it's getting even louder here in the South Shore, and when certain people run for re-election next year, they might need the support of people along the South Shore. So I hope that the political powers that be hear this roar, because this roar is getting louder and louder, and I know together we can stop this compressor station from being built. So with that being said, I want to thank you. It's an honor to serve all of you. It's an honor to be here in support of my colleagues, and it's just great. It's great to see all of you here tonight, so thank you.
If anyone has any questions, a lot of it's in the PowerPoint, but if anyone has any specific questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question for Representative Murphy. You mentioned all the data from all the other stations and how bad it is, but you have not shared a single data point with us tonight about the actual numbers from other stations. Do you think we're too stupid to handle a few facts?
The data that I was referring to, what was on the screen tonight in regard to benzene numbers and other numbers. So no, the numbers that I talked about tonight were on the screen tonight.
We haven't seen any numbers of other stations. There's years and years, hundreds of stations, all kinds of data. Why don't you show us the actual results? See the pollution levels by the numbers, noise by the numbers, frequency by the numbers. Why can't we see the actual experience of other such installations?
Thank you, sir, for that. I know we talked briefly before the meeting, I think, Representative Murphy. I just want to bring up one compressor station called Minnesink. It's in Minnesink, New York. It was built in 2013. Like we said, there's about 930 landowners within a half-mile radius. They have about 280 landowners, so about 20% of the population that we do. Since that time, there's been significant studies of the Minnesink, New York compressor station, and like Jen said, a significant number of nosebleeds, asthma rates are going through the roof. People they can't even sell their homes because it's so close to the compressor station. I don't have anything physical to show you right now, but if anyone wants something relative to us, Minnesink, New York is probably one of the closest to us, but again, their population density compared to the Weymouth, Hingham, Quincy area is about 20% of us. So then you multiply all of their health effects, all of their financial burdens, all of their sacrifices they're making there since 2013, and multiply it by 5, and that would be us. So I know, again, we can reach out to you after the fact with more data. We're more than happy to do it. A lot of people here, this is such a significant issue that all the facts are so overwhelming. I bought a bookcase. I have an entire, probably 7-foot bookcase devoted to documents on this alone. So I couldn't imagine trying to relay all that information in an hour and a half to people here who might not even know what a compressor station is. So I hope that helps you out.
And we can, but sir, some of the points that we were trying to make was the closest air monitoring station is 11 miles away. And the only individuals that were able to monitor what we currently have there with the heavy industrial at the Fall River Basin.
Compressor stations, sir?
Yeah, and there is specific data that is out there right now. A lot of it with these compressor stations, as they're built in 2013 or 2012, there's just simply not enough time to compile a lot of the data that's associated with it. But there are direct health impacts and effects that are being seen across the country in regards to this, as well as malfunctions. I believe 2 specific malfunctions last year at these compressor stations. There is data that's out there and factual information that's out there, and we'll get you specifics in regards to that. But what would be even more unique about this situation is nothing's ever been built in this population center before. Nothing's ever been built near a waterway before. So some of the data, we are literally rolling the dice on, because there isn't a specific measurement that's out there right now when you're going to be the first.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, we said again, 930 landowners within a half mile. Oxford, Connecticut, an existing compressor station on the Algonquin line, has 17 landowners within a half mile compared to our 930. Chaplin, Connecticut has 33 landowners within a half mile. How can you possibly get data from that small percentage? Because compressor stations are built in extremely rural areas, and this would be the first of its kind ever built in the United States of America.
I'd just like to ask this gentleman if he's for the compressor station. Well, based on what's going on in the United States today and the dissolution of the EPA, I think we should be against anything that's going to harm the environment.
I think the cause to fight against this compressor station is just and necessary. And my question to you is, I thank you for all the efforts you did already, but what actions can we take other than just making emails, talking with neighbors and friends? Do you have plans how to balance the opposition with the help of the public, of newspapers, radio stations? See, people need to know more. And the more people are aware of the dangers, the more they will cry out. Many years ago, I did a campaign myself with 4 scientists in Germany in the city of Stuttgart. It was something similar. It was an incinerator, burning trash in the city, which is surrounded by us. And we were successful in such a way that the whole of Germany started recycling. And later on also, and it can be done, I know that. But we need more resources. We need to find out ways to really engage the public more. Everyone who's here is already committed to the public, but there are some people who are not yet committed. So do you have any ideas how we can help you best?
It's a multiple front approach. Right now, we're trying to tackle this with state legislative action to put things on the books in Massachusetts general laws that directly relate to a health assessment for these compressor stations to get specifically the data that gentleman was talking about in a more comprehensive fashion. We're talking about making sure that when we collect data to monitor air, it's within a mile. It's actually the air that's specifically being polluted, in my opinion. Making sure that these compressor stations, when and if necessary to be built, are built in rural areas away from where individuals live and children go to school. And then to make sure that when these compressor stations are built, there's no tax loophole that big energy gets on the backs of polluting our air and making people potentially sick. So that's the state legislative angle on it. The local legislative angle on it is making sure that we continue to educate as many people as possible as to what's going on right now. It's going to take a continued amount of growing political will in order to get to where we need to be to put the pressure on the stakeholders and on the regulators to make sure that they know, as Representative Murphy said, that this roar continues to get louder and louder and louder. Momentum continues to build. We need to take what's been discussed here today and talk to our neighbors about it, find out more information, make sure that we know exactly what specific vehicles we have right now to stop this. The town of Weymouth is currently involved in, I believe, 3 lawsuits or 2 lawsuits? 3 lawsuits in specific regards to this compressor station. We are fighting it from all fronts. We're finding ways that I wouldn't even think of 6 months ago of how we could potentially fight this. It's thinking out of the box and making sure that we continue to move very fast because we're going up against extremely well-funded opponents who have played a hand in writing some of the regulations. The air metering station, which is down at the Fall River Basin, recently had a leak. It had a leak because a switch that was there was a less than 1-inch switch, and because of regulations, they don't have to put an alarm on 1-inch switches or smaller because of rules that they wrote and were able to get past the federal government. So the switch didn't trigger the monitor, a valve. The valve didn't trigger the monitor, and individuals in North Weymouth had to call the fire department, who then called the Enbridge to let them know, Spectra Enbridge, to let them know that there was a gas leak. Now at that point in time, 270,000 cubic yards of gas, natural gas, was emitted into the atmosphere. And they came before the council in Weymouth. Representative Murphy was there, our entire state legislative delegation was there, and we said, how could this happen? How could you not know? And what's the consequence? And so they came there and they basically said, oh, well, regulations are regulations, which they played a hand in writing these federal regulations, and they said we don't need a report unless there's 3 million cubic yards of natural gas that was emitted. So 270,000, which people could smell from neighborhoods and neighborhoods away from where this metering station is, and it would take more than 10 times that amount before they have to submit something to the federal government to say, oh, by the way, there was a gas leak. It's unbelievable, and that's the game they played. They played, oh, well, we're abiding by regulations. We're abiding by regulations. We don't disagree that they're abiding by regulations, but these are regulations that they played a hand in writing, and on top of that, these are regulations that we don't agree with. You know, something that was good 50 years ago or 60 years ago to get to where we are doesn't necessarily play well now anymore. And these regulations, because they are a special interest down in our nation's capital, these regulations are for a lack of a better word, ridiculous when you really put into structure of what's going on and what we're up against. So just keep on fighting. We're up against the Goliath, but we're here right now. We've been here for 2 years. It's all about momentum, and it's about approaching this in a very reasonable fashion.
As Patrick mentions, right, we're in discussions about this compressor station, and we're told that from one thing is they're safe. That's the message to us. They're safe. But yet there's more and more circumstances where there's been leaks across the country, explosions across the country, and we read about them. And then we see in our own town, this wasn't too long ago, this was probably, I don't know, 5 months ago, 6 months ago? Yeah, the leak. It was a leak at this location, and it took the neighbors smelling it to call the fire department, to call the energy company to let them know there was a leak at their own plant, at their own station. And I think it took them about an hour and a half, I might have the numbers wrong, maybe an hour, but extremely long response time to get to this leak. And then when they were called in before the town council, and Patrick and Becky did a great job, the guy that they sent was sent to say as little as possible. Just sitting there, he was asked questions and he would answer the questions, but he would answer them with as little, as small of a sentence as possible, just to say that they showed up and answered the questions and leave. If you saw the hearing that they had questioning this guy, you would just shake your head to say, if there was ever a major problem, how would this power plant, how would this power company be? So that was a precursor for me to see that if there ever was a problem after the station's built, we're in trouble. We'd be in a lot of trouble. Sir?
Okay, thank you very much for coming to see Bob Higgins with Hingham. I'd just like to make a comment, one of which is I agree that there's an environmental impact there according to the information that I received tonight that I was not aware of. My second question is, I'm about 4 miles from the proposed site of the construction plant of the compressor plant. What I would like to know is there other impacts other than environmental that are known to the committee, for instance, the sound waves and shock waves and so forth. And I'm within about 4 miles of the plant. Are there any proposals or studies, or is there anything that we can put our hands on? I'd like to make a better informed decision about taking care of myself and my family and my property. The environmental issue, of course, is significant, but if there's something I can do to mitigate the problem coming to Hingham, and I just haven't heard anything about it, and I'd like to find out if we could talk about that. Thank you.
You know, you addressed a great concern, because a lot of people who are in the fight, again, a lot of people, it's not that the environmental impacts isn't important, but they want to know how it's going to affect their day-to-day life. Obviously, if you live 4 miles away from the compressor station, you're probably not going to hear it on a day-to-day basis. It is a building that does make like sort of a hum, almost like a dull jet engine, just like So those of us who live in the immediate area, we may hear some, low sounds on a day-to-day basis. But there's what's called a blowdown, which will occur probably at a minimum of 2 times a year, upwards of however many times they need to release the pressure in the pipes or anytime an emergency occurs. Now, these are extremely loud. They do have mufflers on the compressor stations, but it's, I can't explain it. It's almost like a jet taking off right in your backyard, and it lasts for about 3 minutes, and it emits whatever is in the pipeline at that time. So it could be a lot of mercaptan gas, or it could be very minimal, whatever happens to be there. So you'll have this noise and you'll have the sound. Now, whether or not, I personally, again, I'm not a scientist, I can't tell whether or not you'll hear it from 4 miles away, but there's a possibility, and again, I don't think we know. I don't know where the threshold of the sound of a blowdown, where it goes. Alice, I don't know if you've ever heard of where the radius is from a blowdown on a sound standpoint. I do know those of us who live in North Weymouth and Quincy will hear it, based on our research, but going that far out, I'm not sure what really your impacts will be on a day-to-day basis that can physically be seen by you. I hope that helps.
Hi, thank you for coming out. Dave Gamble, I live here in Hingham. I just had a couple facts that I wanted to check. I think that I'm correct in that this station will be monitored from Houston, Texas, and there will be nobody on site. So much like the monitoring station right now, where there's nobody there, the neighbors had smell the gas. If there's a problem at the site, there's nobody actually physically on site from the power company, right?
Correct. There's supposed to be one person that works 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, but then after that, everything is controlled via computers with the main dispatch in Houston. There is a headquarters in Westwood or Waltham in there, so like when the emergency happened, someone was dispatched out of Waltham to come down.
Okay. And the second thing I wanted to check oh, sorry. Is that better? I thought it was probably loud enough anyway. But another question I had for you was, I understand that this, other than maybe the person that works there from 7 to 3, 5 days a week, doesn't really create any jobs in Massachusetts, right? We're going to build a power station, we're going to build a compressor station, which is a big turbine, and that's all that Massachusetts really gets at.
Correct. Honestly, when the proposal first came before us, one of our first questions was, what will the tax impacts be to the town of Weymouth and how many people will it employ? I think a lot of you, if you're from here originally, you might have remembered like the Quincy shipyard. It employed hundreds of people, not thousands. It was a boom to the economy. There will be no full-time employees. The construction period will last about 6 months, so temporary construction jobs will range anywhere from 30 to 110 people, with the peak being 110. Yet if you read through all the pages of reports, only about 15%, if that, will be local hires, which means out of 110 people, you're going to have maybe 15 or 20, maybe laborers come to, dig some holes, help construct it. They're going to truck in all of their specialists, people who know how to build compressor stations. And I think maybe it's fortunately, there are people in Massachusetts who know how to build compressor stations because it's not common here. They're from Texas, they're from Pennsylvania. They're going to truck them in for about 3 or 4 months and then add a few, like 20 laborers to help build it. So it's not going to be any significant economic impact to Weymouth or the South Shore.
Sorry, one more question, then one statement. The last question that I have, just to confirm, is that opposing the siting of this compressor station at this location doesn't mean that necessarily the pipeline can't continue to carry gas the way it carries gas. It doesn't mean that it can't have greater capacity. It doesn't mean that this gas still can't flow, because if I understand it correctly, these stations only need to be built every 40 to 100 miles along the pipeline, right? So this location, other than being beneficial to the Inbridge, is not good for us, better for us, worse for us. You don't have to be against the pipeline, against building a pipeline. You don't have to be against natural gas to think that this is a bad location.
Sure.
Correct, and myself and Representative Murphy were just talking about this too, and we're not getting the gas. I mean, it's going to Canada. It's their environmental assessment says it's going to Canada, and it's split between Maine, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and they combine Connecticut and Massachusetts in the percentages, so you can't even get a specific percentage out of them of how much this gas is going to come to us. So no jobs. They're going to bring people in from out of state to construct this compressor station, and then they're going to clean this gas, emit it into our atmosphere, essentially, for delivery to another country.
And then the last statement I had is, this very much has, from the reading I've done, impacted home values in towns surrounding where this is located. So this is not, if you're not interested in the environmental issue, if you're not interested in jobs, natural gas, whatever it may be, this very likely will impact the value of your home in this town. Very, very, very likely. And I've heard people already that are becoming aware of this issue have had people back away from interest in their homes that are currently for sale in Hingham. So this is a very, very critical issue from however you come to the subject. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your questions. On the note of what exactly can we do, I just want to say one of my favorite statements is death by 1,000 cuts. It takes a lot of cutting, and I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Moulds, who is an attorney who has been helping us, not barred in Massachusetts. She always I can see that you're saying that, but still a brilliant legal mind and has spent a lot of time researching this for us. She'd like to just give a quick legal update from a Hingham perspective.
Okay, I am not licensed in Massachusetts. I am not practicing law. I am a citizen just like you. I was a lawyer 10 years ago, but I don't want to get involved in the unauthorized practice of law. So let's be clear, I'm a citizen. But I was concerned because the foxes are watching the hen house. And whichever way you cut it, from environmental, from property value, from the health of my little children's perspective, I started reading because that's what ex-lawyers do. And I found some Massachusetts regs that said, okay, a group of 10 citizens concerned about harm to the environment can form a 10-citizen group and intervene in some permitting proceedings. So Weymouth, of course, has paved the way. They have been on this. Last Friday, a group of 20 of us from Hingham moved to intervene in the air permitting process. So we filed with DEP, we're on file, just citizens, not our town. Our town has not entered into this fight in any legal capacity, and I would encourage all of us, if you are so moved, to tell your neighbors, tell the Board of Selectmen that, yes, the town should get behind this legally, it's going to take a lot of resources to fight a Canadian multi-conglomerate energy company. They hired Vince Levin and Bill Weld to start lobbying our governor. That could be why Charlie Baker has not been taking a stand. You know, he is the head of our executive branch, which is where DEP is controlled by. So it would be nice if our governor was speaking up for his citizens on this. But you can follow the money, and it's going to take some. So I just want you all to be prepared. But in the meantime, we have filed this. We're on file. If they issue the permit, which they probably will, at least we may have standing to fight it, to appeal it. If Hingham does not get involved in its own town capacity, we will have no real ability to appeal it in federal court, just from the air permitting process. Now that's just one slice of the pie. We were too late on Chapter 99 or Chapter 91 wetlands. We're not involved in waterway or Chapter 91 waterways or wetlands. So really, Hingham legally has air. So let's use what we can. But it's not just going to be a legal fight. It's going to be, as everyone has said, a political fight and a PR fight. So if you have any resources at your own disposal, I mean, I never intended to write another legal brief in my life. And again, this isn't a legal brief, it's a citizen drafted brief. But, you know, if you're a scientist, if you're in PR, if you have any of those resources or know people at your disposal, now is the time to call in those favors and dust off your books. Thank you.
A lot of hard work. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Coming right up to you, sir. Oh, actually, no.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lana. I've gotten up and spoken about this before, and I actually got involved because of this incredible group of women. But I really want to, I'm going to turn and talk to the audience, but I really want to tell you, every piece of medical evidence that is done when the research is done, these are toxic chemicals that will hurt you. It's not a matter of will they hurt you, it's when and how. So I'm a really busy doctor. There's not enough doctors coming up to do this because we have tons of patients. But the reality is, these are toxic chemicals that absolutely will hurt you. And whether it's a bizarre malignancy, you're not going to be able to say, I want to see the data, because unfortunately in our world, the data is sometimes lagging the concern. 7 years of data to prove things. Do we know it causes molecular defects? Absolutely. Do we know it causes cancer? Absolutely. Can I tell you 13 cancers? Absolutely. Toluene, methane, xylene, formaldehyde. Go to a compressor station. When they're having a blowdown, go pull up and breathe. Just once. That's all you have to do, and put 10 people in the car with you, and then send them back with 10 people. And that's how you build a grassroots movement. There are billions of dollars to be made here. Don't you understand? These are legal bribes. These are people who go to the government and change the laws to get their way. And so how do good citizens rise? We get together and we fight. And it's exhausting, and we all want to go back to our life and we want to pretend this isn't happening. But when that thing is here and you're breathing it and smelling it and wearing these chemicals, you are going to turn around and say, oh my God, why didn't I do something? And then getting that thing down, you're not going to get it down. So please, get in your car and go when that blowdown happens, and I promise you, you will start screaming, no, no, no. But you have to feel it and understand it, and everyone's trying to understand it, but the reality will make you understand it. So anyway, thank you to everyone here. They must have such political pressure on them not to do this. I can't even imagine. You must be hiding. So we are so grateful that they're out there doing this, and we need every single person in this room. If you don't understand, go breathe that air. Anyone who asks that question, go breathe it, and you won't have a question again. So thank you.
Hi, Larry Lindner, Hingham. I am all for death by 1,000 cuts. I'm here, I'm ready to go all Aaron Brockovich with the rest of you. But I'm very disheartened because 1,200 cuts didn't stop the pending air quality permit. And it just feels like no matter what we do, this is going to go through. The nail is already in the coffin. It seems like common sense to everybody in this room, but money is talking, and I'm afraid that, you know, our efforts can slow things down, but won't stop them. It's not really, it's a question, like, please, I hope, will you tell me I'm wrong?
You're wrong. So, and I think that's why we're all here, and that's why you're here. It's not a done deal until it's a done deal. And we're doing everything we can politically to stop it, everything we can legally to stop it. And it's just seeing you here tonight shows that it's still possible to stop it. The more momentum, the more opposition, the better the chance it is that we're going to stop it. So that's why we're here.
And we, in the air quality permit, there was a conditional approval, but they haven't approved it yet. And the only thing that's holding that up is the fact that they received 1,200 comments. That's it. I mean, when we talk about this, and you saw the timeline, we took it from a local level to a state level to a federal level politically. You hear about the legal components that we have and the legal challenges that we will make. This is the first continuous step of a long, long fight. Each one of these permits that get approved and the conditional approval, they're battles that we may not have won right there, but that doesn't end the battle. The eventuality of this will be that it's denied by the state, it's denied by the federal government, or we take it to court and we go as far as we possibly can to make sure that this never happens.
Oh, and I'll really briefly, I'll just add, you know, at the beginning of this, a lot of people were like, you know, why are you fighting? You're never going to win. FERC has never denied one of these. And that's sort of the truth. But, you know, when we do our research and we look at different pipeline projects, because some of us do this for fun, we wake up in the morning, we look, what's going on in Virginia, Washington State? Well, we do. I can't even deny it. But they don't deny it. You know why? Because the industry doesn't let them get to a point of denial, because that will look really bad for them. What they do is they pull out. You know, so our best case scenario here is Spectra or Enbridge comes out sometime very soon and says, hey guys, we're going to rework our plan, we're going to redo the compressor station. Maybe the buyers don't want to buy our gas anymore right now, so we're going to delay it a little bit. So it's probably not going to be a FERC denial. It's going to be, we put enough pressure, we make enough noise, we get the lawn signs out, we do the standouts, we keep yelling and screaming, and eventually they're going to say, this is not worth our time or effort, we're going to rethink this and move elsewhere. And then that town can fight or whatever. So just keep fighting is all I say, because, you know, that's all you can do.
Hi, I'm Jenny Weymouth. I'm a resident in Hingham. I've been coming to some of these meetings, and I've been doing my reading, and I'm really glad to see the community out here today, the Hingham residents. What I think would be helpful for a lot of people would be to review a little bit of the sheet. There's some particulars I see on here about what people can actually do, people they can call, people they can write. Certainly, we all need to talk to each other and our neighbors about what we've heard tonight and keep piquing people's interest. But maybe if you could go over some of these things, it would be helpful for the people in the room, so when they have some action items they could do tomorrow when they get home.
I don't know if Michelle's going to maybe go with it all. I think they're going to get some actual contact information, but from the very minimum, honestly, you know, like we said, talk to your neighbors, put up a yard sign, use your connections. Maybe some of you guys know reporters, whether it be from the Hingham Journal or up to CNN, anyone you know who might pick up the story, and you just keep pressing them. You know, a lot of times people said, oh, we don't want to duplicate your efforts. It's not about duplicating efforts, it's finding that connection, because someone we might have reached out to didn't respond to us, but they might reach out to you because they know you. So from very minimum, just keep yard signs, post it on social media. If anyone in Minnesota is Googling compressor station right now, you know what they're finding? They're finding Weymouth. They're not finding the other ones already out there, because we've made such a noise. We have so many media articles out there. And I think maybe the Hingham group can maybe relate about actual people to contact. I know we're talking to Tom Cushing in air permitting, Mass DEP for waterways. I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on anybody. Pretty much, I mean,
Hi, I'm Brittany Gill. I'm one of the founders of the Hingham Residents Against Compressor. So we put together actually this handout that has some action items for everybody. And it gives you guys in detail to take home just some of the things that you can do. So the first is actually for Senate Bill 469 that was discussed by Senator O'Connor. So basically how you can be in support of this bill. And as I said, unfortunately, because this is a live piece of paper instead of an email, if you want to reach out to us, we'd be happy to give you guys some talking points and direct contact information, just for saving paper and everything. So we have that. We also have, if you could call and email the Mass DEP, MEA, about the air pollution permit. As we discussed earlier, all of the recent data that was collected by Dr. Nordgaard and all of the studies showing the alarming levels of the pollutants that are already in the area. And so if you wanted to reach out, if you would, to Mass DEP and their umbrella agency, which is Mass EEA. And so you could ask directly for them to retract or deny the draft air pollution permit, or repeat the air pollution analysis with independent consultants. So that's something you could do. And we have the email addresses, we have phone numbers for the various people, and we also actually on here have draft example of an email or letter you can send. Another thing we could do is call Governor Baker's office and just ask why he's not supporting the residents of Fort River Basin and the entire South Shore. Why he hasn't come out and made any kind of statement about this actually. And so because right now he's claiming that this is at the federal level and it's going to be a federal decision, but we have state agencies involved such as the Mass DEP and Coastal Zone Management that have the ability to stop these permits. So calling Governor Baker's line and his constituents line, we have that phone number right there. There are people actually, the first time I called, I'll freely admit, I anticipated I'd be put on hold forever. And to my surprise, someone picked up right away while I had kids screaming in the car. And I had to be ready with what I wanted to say. So just a fair warning, they do actually answer the line, they take your comments, and be sure to give your name, your number, just your actual contact info. And again, as we've said over and over, it would be great if you've been so moved today to join us to help us. We're always looking for anything from anybody, professional backgrounds such as CPA or environmental law, Mass state law, audio-visual support, videography, anything you think that you might be able to help us with, or as said, any connection you might have, or thought of somebody that you could call, somebody that either you're connected to on just a friendly level or through work, professional. If you have any ideas or feel that you have a resource or that you in some way could help with this, we'd love to hear from you. We're so fortunate that we have had FRAX and the people in neighboring Weymouth who've done an amazing job leading this fight and bringing us all up to speed on everything that's been going on, and that we have our 3 amazing reps tonight who are just keeping us going. But we've also been moved by how many people in this town know that people are getting involved. Just the connections that we have by simply, talking to one another, and how quickly we can spread the word and who we can call. So anything you can think of, any of those options would be absolutely fantastic. So thank you. Dawn, she is very shy. Is happily sitting over there, not very shy. Okay, come over here.
Hi there, thank you for coming out tonight and talking to us. My name is Andrew Smith, I'm from Quincy. This issue is very new to me, so I'm playing catch up. I'd like to know When was the last time that we had one of these community meetings where a representative from Spectra was available to the members of the community to take feedback and to answer questions? Has that ever happened? And if it hasn't, can we make it happen? Is anybody up for that?
I think the last official meeting was May of 2016 when we had the waterways open. We had a public hearing at the Abigail Adams Middle School in Weymouth along with a written comment period. That was the last time they were officially in front of us where the public was allowed to get up and ask questions just like tonight. They were before us. Spectra came before us in February of 2017 this year to address questions about the gas leak. However, it was just the Weymouth Town Councilors that were allowed to ask questions. So we've been about a year since there was an opportunity for that.
And we'd be more than willing. I mean, the amount of correspondence that all three of us send to Spectra and Bridge on a pretty much weekly basis, whether it be in opposition to some plan, whether it be a lawsuit that we've all signed on to for the town of Weymouth, whether it be a resolution, whether it be health impacts, whatever it is, we continuously slam them with correspondence. And I would highly recommend that you do that as well. It may be sort of a lost cause type of approach, but as much as possible. Make them work.
And just to follow up really quick, if they move forward with Access Northeast, because everything we've done so far has been Atlantic Bridge, and there's two projects here, it's Atlantic Bridge and Access Northeast. If they actually move forward with Access Northeast, we're going to have every single public hearing and open comment period again, because we're going to still be on the waterways, which means there's going to be at least 4 public hearings in Weymouth where you could rally up and come, say whatever you want to say. But again, that's still in the pre-filing stage. There's nothing formal been submitted for that second phase, so just wanted to add that in there.
And just wanted to add one more thing to your question. The town of Hingham invited, the Board of Selectmen invited Spectra and Bridge to the meeting where they formulated the resolution. They were going to discuss it and then just vote on whether or not they wanted to pass the resolution, which they did, against the compressor station. And Spectra said they could not attend.
And on that resolution too, thanks. I see Mike Mullally here, the one that brought it to the attention of the Board of Selectmen. So thank you, Mike, for all of your work on that as well.
I'll be brief. Paul Gannon, and I just have a question, but I also have a quick comment. I've been in some of the meetings in Dallas and Quincy. Council, Senator, and Representative, make no mistake about it, you folks, and I mean colleagues also in Weymouth, in the town of Weymouth, have been leading this charge. And I, as I have before, congratulate you and thank you. As for a period of time, you were speaking for all of us, the neighboring communities. And I know that Hingham has really stepped it up. I know that the board did pass that resolution, but there's so many other folks around here, Michael, and the committee, really working on this. I just want to make sure that I thank you for everything you do. It's a lot of work. Here's my question, and I looked at the legislation. I know we're into June. I just a thought, maybe a comment from the Senator or Representative as to the likelihood of the legislation, some of it passing. I know we have increasing bipartisan support, which is very encouraging, by the way. And the ultimate question I have is, if these pieces of legislation do pass, is there an issue of federal preemption that comes into play on some or all of the issues and whether they get approved? That's basically my question.
No, that's a great question, Paul. So when we were able to get this passed in the Senate as far as the 0.3 of a mile, the major component that we wanted to get out there was that we wanted something on the books in Massachusetts that said, although FERC has the overall authority with the siting and with a lot of these specific issues, we want something on the books here in Massachusetts that says within a half mile of a school, a park, a playground, wherever children congregate, wherever people call home, you shouldn't be building these compressor stations. And we think that legally in a court case would speak volumes that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has put out there, Mass General Law, stating the fact that they don't want these in these certain areas. And if there are areas in your alternative locations that you submitted with your permitting that meet some of these criteria, why don't you do them there? So we think that it's a huge tool in our toolbox that we will be able to have moving forward with this, making sure this doesn't happen again, and also when this continues along this process, that Massachusetts continues to be a leader in the forefront of making sure these things are positioned and cited properly. And as far as if we can get it passed, we have another year and some change, about 14 months to get this passed. We've spoken with both the Senate and House co-chairs of Environmental, Agriculture, and Natural Resources. We believe that it's a very friendly committee for us to have been placed there. We work extremely well with Senator Goby. I know that Representative Murphy worked with her in the House of Representatives, and I really feel good about it. I do. As far as the one in the Joint Committee on Revenue, I mean, that's a huge tax shift, and I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars that'll be up against that one to change the taxes from $47,000 to $1.4 million on the taxing of underground utilities that are above ground as above ground. As far as air monitoring, I think that that's a no-brainer. I think that when you look at something that's environmentally hazardous, we should be monitoring the air around there from the direct location in which that it's being presented as potentially hazardous. And the health assessment, I think that these are things that we should have been doing a long time ago. We already have compressor stations in Massachusetts. We should charge one of our public health universities, to study this, whether it be Tufts or whether it be Harvard or whether it be the University of Massachusetts. Someone should be monitoring and studying the health assessments. We tried to do this in a we always try and work in a bipartisan manner, but we tried to do it bipartisanly, and we tried to make bills that made sense, that it's hard to argue against, and I think that we've put that in there. Make sure that there's no tax loopholes with big energy companies that are building these. Make sure that when these are being built, they're not built where people live. Make sure that if these things are built, make sure we monitor the air. And then the other thing is, make sure we keep up with this research. And if this is continuously detrimental, let's ban the entire process. But it's common sense stuff that we feel that there's not a lot of opposition towards. And if there is opposition towards it, it's from big energy companies themselves.
As Patrick said, it is all common sense. Joan, Moschino, myself, and Patrick appeared before the selectmen when Paul was still a selectman then. And we arrived at the meeting and we said, wow, what a crowd. People can't wait to hear us talk about the state budget. But then we realized it was all of you who were appearing the same night. And I think that's when you did the resolution that night or shortly thereafter. So we were surprised by that. We were surprised by the crowd, surprised that you were all there. We were very happy to see you all, and that's when we got to meet you all officially. And then you came to the State House and testified on behalf of the bills that we filed. And the bills are common sense bills. To the gentleman's point in the back, this isn't about what you believe in regard to natural gas. This isn't a natural gas debate. This isn't whether or not you support or oppose natural gas. We're talking about specifically whether or not a compressor station like this should be placed where they want to put it. That's it. And that's what the bill speaks to. Not putting a station where it can hurt people. That's what the bill says. Common sense approach. You don't have to be a Democrat or Republican or any other party to understand that this location for this pumping station, it's a bad idea.
Hi, I'm Sandy Weymouth. I live in Hingham. I was at the Quincy meeting a couple weeks ago, and there was mentioned there that another way to stop this is for the Mass Department of Public Health to do a public health assessment based on the data that Dr. Nurkard collected. It hasn't been mentioned tonight, but is that still, am I right in saying that, and is that still a viable option? I'm not sure if any of you were at that meeting, but
I was there. I know that
there was a slide that mentioned a public health assessment.
Yeah, no, and it's something that we're looking into, and it's something that we're considering as we move forward. I mean, that information was very damning as far as the specifics of what's going on in our atmosphere right now, as is pre-compressor station, and now having to deal with something like the compressor station would be, crazy, to be perfectly honest with you. So what we're trying to do is, while we're fighting on all fronts with DEP and trying to figure out the waterways and organizing things like this, we have a lot of stuff that we're looking at. I know that myself, Senator Keenan, Representative Murphy, Becky, Representative Moschino, we're looking into the potential of the Attorney General's office right now too, and seeing what sort of legality that we can play, what past precedents there is, just to try and stop it from the state's roots using the state's attorney. So there's a lot of stuff that we're looking into, and the health assessment is definitely one of them. Kurt's been unbelievable in this entire process. We're so lucky to have a resource like him, and specifically with that information that he used, the state should be completing their own assessment on that same research, doing their own tests, monitoring the specific air quality that we have currently in the Fall River Basin that we're all breathing in, and take it from there. But it's definitely one of the routes that we're taking down. A lot of times, specifically, state government works very efficiently, but in a lot of times, it takes a while to get to where you need to get to in order to get this stuff done. And that's sort of where we're at with the public health assessment, but it's one of the things that we're working on.
But one thing that Patrick and Becky will tell you is that there is no blueprint to how to stop this. We're not experts that fly across the country and talk to people about how to stop compressor stations. Neither was Alice, neither was anybody in this room. None of us know how to do it. So that's why it's important to reach out. You mentioned the study, that could be one route. We don't have the blueprint. Reach out to your colleagues. We talked about mentioning things, if you have people in the business that have certain expertise. We're not experts. We are just like you, learning as we go. We know a little bit more than you, but I would tend to believe that that's only for a temporary amount of time now that I see the interest in this room. But we're open to finding out ways to stop it. There's no blueprint as to how to stop the compressor station.
We have 2 more in this row.
I just had a question. If there's a department and their job is to protect us, right, like the DEP, and they don't, and they actually are passing legislation that harms us, is there a precedence that we can sue them? Because if they're afraid of getting sued for not doing their job, that's a pretty big card for them to go back and look. Like what you're pointing out, why do physicians have to go out in the field and measure toxicities when we have a state agency that gets tax dollars to protect us? And so I would think that if we could threaten them with lawsuits for not doing their job, they'll start doing their job pretty fast. Because, we press that button with elections, but it would be great if we can have the people get mad that their tax dollars are getting wasted, and instead of protecting us, they're harming us. And if that precedent came to pass, it would make a lot of people in those positions afraid to cave in to the pressure from the financial buy-ins. So the question is, have there been, lawsuits of people in these positions? Because we keep saying the DEP, but there's people, right? There's individuals in the DEP responsible.
Not that we know of as of right now, but there's something that we can look into as well. Again, it's just taking it all from a different route. It's thinking out of the box, like things like that. So we'll look into that.
Okay, I think that we are towards the end. Eyeballing everybody and we're looking down at the floor. So I'm going to take that as a sign that we may be heading towards the end of question and answer. Any last minute questions? Oh, okay. 2 more and then that'll be a wrap.
I just wanted to add on to the comment about calling Governor Baker. And there are a lot of people in this town who voted for him, you should mention that, or if you gave him money, you should mention that and tell him that you're disappointed, in him for not taking a stand on this yet.
I have one more back here. Oh, right. We have signs for sale out back. We wanted to get that out.
So it sounds like there are alternate locations in close proximity to us right now in Weymouth and then I think you said Quincy. So is there the chance that we fight so hard that we get them to walk away and they walk away to one of these alternate locations, which sounds like, given the information you've provided, we don't want that even there. And it actually sounds like the best chance that we have to fight this is the waterways CZM card, and that would go away if these locations aren't on the water. Not to end on a downer, but it worries me.
Yeah, no, definitely the best route we have right now would be through the CZM, as far as the state goes. If they pulled out right now with the conditional approval and took another location, they'd have to open up the entire approval process again, which takes years. that we've already gone through. It would open it up to public hearing, and at that point in time, it's not sort of organization as you go, it's that we already have a full-fledged army of people who are opposed to this. So I don't think that I think if they pull out from this location, it's done as far as in this region. And the only area outside of us would be Franklin, Massachusetts, which they did have it in a very rural area in Franklin, but it was something that they put down on a piece of paper that they submitted to the federal government because they needed to have alternative locations, and they never actually did any real specific research there. Anything that we asked them when they came before us about assessments that they've done on the land, or even talking to the Board of Selectmen there, they hadn't done any of that yet. And actually, James Valley, his father is still the chair of the Board of Selectmen in Franklin, and when I spoke to him about this, a former state representative, he had said that his father hadn't even heard about it yet. So this is an alternative location in a federal document about building a natural gas compressor station, and they haven't even informed the chairman of the legislative branch of government. I mean, it's crazy.
All right, one more, and then it's great. Roll school.
This floor is a little slippery. It's like you have to be careful coming here. But anyway, this whole story is slippery. I'm Liz, and I appreciate everything that everyone has done here. It's amazing. And I was going to ask about the coastal zone management, because that does seem like our key. And it sounded like that we have to wait for the Clean Air Act decision before we can advance forward to the coastal zone management. Is that true? I mean, we can't go find the coastal zone management people and get going?
And we can start immediately as far as that goes. There are triggers, though, that open up the process of when CZM actually starts taking a hard look at this. But CZM is essentially a tool the federal government gave to the states to say when things that are federally regulated or around waterways happen, the state has the right to look at specific criteria. I have it on here too. The criteria of coastal hazards, energy, growth, habitat, ocean resources, ports and harbors, protected areas, public access, and water quality. They can specifically look at. And basically it's the federal government saying, look, we know that we have an overreaching 90% of control over this entire project, but just in case something fell through the cracks, they'll give it to CZM to say, let us know if you guys don't like it and don't approve that permit. And that's why I think it's our best bet, is because this is literally the federal government passing the buck to the state, and now it's the state having the opportunity to weigh in on something that could potentially supersede federal approvals.
So, no, thank you for that. So I think what we really have that is most of our power is we live by the water, and people love it here. And that's why they come here. So it's not just our own community, it's people who visit us. And I just don't know how you get at people, because even where I live, I'm talking to people about this, and you know, I'm sort of hearing the same old story of like, this is going in, Liz, get over it. And I'm like, oh, you know, I can't accept that. But I think a lot of people, you know, even who have heard, have got the same thing digging into them. I guess I don't know how we can get rid of that, because, you know, you just left me with a little bit more hope. I came here, I'm going to leave with some hope, because this is a lot of good work. But I think that's why some more people aren't out, because I think they don't feel like they can make a difference. And that's really what I believe from what I've heard. But people really do care, so I agree. What else can we do, you know?
I think just to follow up on that too, CZM, there's certain triggers in the whole FERC process, and like we've said, we've been at this for 2.5 years. Now, part of that trigger was last August, CZM was supposed to rule, and they were supposed to start construction March, so we should be halfway through the construction right now if it weren't for all the citizen advocacy and all the government involvement. In August of last year, CZM issued a 1-year stay, and they said, we need 1 more year to make a ruling. And in that stay, they specifically said, we cannot make our decision because we do not have the wetlands or the waterways determinations. So hypothetically, if CZM were to come out soon without those determinations, we can almost use that letter against them too. Like they said last August, we can't make a ruling because we don't have wetlands or waterways. So then why all of a sudden then can they come out soon and say, well, we're going to do it anyways? So I guess in some ways, I mean, to hope gain even more hope and trust in us is we're following everything that happens to a T. I mean, every letter, every dot they put on these letters and documents they put out, we're reading, we're rereading, and everyone is. And I think you should just trust that, you know, just keep fighting the wetlands, fighting the waterways, and then we go to CZM, because we're already in June. I mean, wetlands is still so far away because of our appeal that probably won't happen for at least till the fall. So it will be very interesting to see how CZM plays come this August when their stay expires, whether they're going to extend the stay or whether they're going to say, we're not even going to worry about it, we're going to rule anyway. Because that would, again, in my mind, prompt further legal action we can take, that they're not doing their due diligence, CZM, by waiting for that wetlands and waterways permit. So hopefully that gives you some more hope and reassurance that, you know, we up here, Representative Murphy, Senator O'Connor, and all of us, the town of Weymouth, everyone, is doing their job to really fight every step of the way, every avenue we can.
I want to say that Frax is, you know, I look at this as little mini battles. Frax has been fighting these battles for the last couple of years, and the new cavalry is arriving to add you some fresh air and some fresh perspective. And enough battles fought wins the war eventually. And so I think that is the way you need to look at it. It can be very overwhelming. My kids haven't had a home cooked meal in a long time. I don't even know how you all have done this. My husband thinks he loves me dearly, thinks I'm a lunatic in the best of ways. You can't get overwhelmed. You have to take it day by day, and I hope that you can leave there encouraged. And in terms of leaving here with hope, it feels good to fight. Like you gotta make a difference. You gotta try. It sounds so optimistic and so idealistic, but those are how the best victories are won. So I want to say thank you to everybody for being here tonight.